worshipped by the king, the Lord blessed him and decided to depart. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Most important are the words Pratinan Yar Tavad Vacha, which indicate that the Lord appreciated the very meaningful prayers of the king. When a devotee prays to the Lord, it is not to ask for material benefits, but to ask the Lord for his favor. He prays that he may be engaged in the service of the Lord's lotus feet, birth after birth. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, uses the words Mama Janmani Janmani, which means birth after birth, because a devotee is not even interested in stopping the repetition of birth. The Lord and the devotee appear in this material world, birth after birth, but such births are transcendental. In the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord informed Arjuna that both he and Arjuna had undergone many, many births previously. But the Lord remembered everything about them, whereas Arjuna had forgotten. The Lord and his confidential devotees appear many times to fulfill the Lord's mission. But since such births are transcendental, they are not accompanied by the miserable conditions of material birth, and they are therefore called divya, transcendental. One must understand the transcendental birth of the Lord and the devotee. The purpose of the Lord's taking birth is to establish devotional service, which is the perfect system of religion. And the purpose of the birth of a devotee is to okay, let's start again. The purpose of the Lord's taking birth is to establish devotional service, which is the perfect system of religion. And the purpose of the birth of a devotee is to broadcast the same system of religion, or the bhakti cult, all over the world. Pritha Maharaj was an incarnation of the power of the Lord to spread the bhakti cult, and the Lord blessed him to remain fixed in his position. Thus, when the king refused to accept any material benediction, the Lord appreciated that refusal very much. Another significant word in this verse is achyuta, which means infallible. Although the Lord appears in this material world, he is never to be considered one of the conditioned souls who are all fallible. When the Lord appears, he remains in his spiritual position, uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, and therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord appeared. The Lord expresses the quality of his appearance as Atma Mayaya, performed by internal potency. The Lord, being infallible, is not forced by material nature to take birth in this material world. He appears in order to reestablish the perfect order of religious principles and to vanquish the demoniac influence in human society. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 35 and 36. King Prithu worship the demigods, the great sages, the inhabitants of Pitraloka, the inhabitants of Gandharva Loka, and those of Siddhaloka, Charana Loka, Panagaloka, Kinar Aloka, Apsaro Loka, the earthly planets, and the planets of the birds. He also worshipped many other living entities who presented themselves as the supreme, who presented, sorry, he also worshipped many other living entities who presented themselves in the sacrificial arena. With folded hands, he worshipped all these as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the personal associates of the Lord by offering sweet words and as much wealth as possible after this function. They all went back to their respective abodes, following in the footsteps of Lord Vishnu. Wow, that's a real festival. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In modern so-called scientific society, the idea is very prevalent that there is no life on other planets, but that only on this Earth do living entities with intelligence and scientific knowledge exist. The Vedic literatures, however, do not accept this foolish theory. The followers of Vedic wisdom are fully aware of various planets inhabited by varieties of living entities, such as demigods, the sages, the pitas, the Gandharvas, the Panagas, the Kinnaras, the Charanas, the Siddhas, and the Apsaras. The Vedas give information that the that in all planets, not only within this material sky, but also in the spiritual sky, there are varieties of living entities. Although all these living entities are of one spiritual nature, in quality the same as the Supreme Personality Godhead, they have varieties of bodies due to the embodiment of the spirit soul by the 8 material elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and false ego. In the spiritual world, however, there is no such distinction between the body and the embodied. In the material world, distinctive features are manifested in different types of bodies in the various planets. We have full information from the Vedic literature that in each and every planet, both material and spiritual, there are living entities of varied intelligence. The Earth is one of the planets of the Loka planetary system. There are 6 planetary systems above Loka and 7 planetary systems below it. Therefore, the entire universe is known as Chaturdasa Bhuvana, indicating that it has 14 different planetary systems. Beyond the planetary systems in the material sky, there is another sky which is known as Paravyoma, or the spiritual sky, where there are spiritual planets. The inhabitants of those planets engage in varieties of loving service unto the Supreme Personality of God, which include different rasas or relationships known as Pasya Sakya Vatsalya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, and above all, Parakya Rasa. This Parakya Rasa or paramour love is prevalent in Krishna Loka, where Lord Krishna lives. This planet is also called Goloka Vrindavana. And although Lord Krishna lives there perpetually, he also expands himself in millions and trillions of forms. In one such form, he appears on this material planet in a particular place known as Vrindavana Dhamma, where he displays his original pastimes of Goloka Vrindavana Dhamma in the spiritual sky in order to attract the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead, Hare Krishna. Text number 37. The infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead, having captivated the minds of the king and the priests who were present, returned to his abode in the spiritual sky. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Because the Supreme Personality of God is all spiritual, he can descend from the spiritual sky without changing his body. And thus, he is known as Achyuta, or infallible. When a living entity falls down to the material world, however, he has to accept the material body, and therefore, in his material embodiment, he cannot be called Achyuta. Because he falls down from his real engagement in the service of the Lord, the living entity gets a material body to suffer or try to enjoy in the miserable material conditions of life. Therefore, the fallen living entity is Chuta, whereas the Lord is called Achyuta. The Lord was attractive for everyone, not only the king, but also the priestly order, who were very much addicted to the performance of Vedic rituals. Because the Lord is all attractive, he is called Krishna, or one who attracts everyone. The Lord appeared in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu as Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, who is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. He is the second incarnation from Karanadakshayi Vishnu. The Lord appeared in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu as Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, who is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. He is the second incarnation from Karanadakshayi Vishnu, who is the origin of material creation, and who expands as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, who then enters into each and every universe. Kshirodakshayi Vishnu is one of the Purushas who control the material modes of nature. King Prithu then offered his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Although not an object of material vision, the Lord revealed himself to the sight of Maharaj Prithu. After offering obeisances to the Lord, the king returned to his home. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord is not visible to material eyes, but when the material senses are inclined to the transcendental loving service of the Lord and are thus purified, the Lord reveals himself to the vision of the devotee. Avyakta means unmanifest. Although the material world is the creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is unmanifested to material eyes. Maharaj Prithu, however, develops spiritual eyes by his pure devotional service. Here, therefore, the Lord is described as Sandarshitatma, for he reveals himself to the vision of the devotee, although he is not visible to ordinary eyes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth chapter, fourth canto, 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena of Maharaj. Prithu, Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. Okay, so now we're going to go on to chapter 21. Second. Okay, chapter 21. Instructions by Maharaj Prithu. Text number 1. The great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when the king entered his city, it was very beautifully decorated to receive him with pearls, flower garlands, beautiful cloth, and golden gates. And the entire city was perfumed with highly fragrant incense. Wow, that's nice. Purport. Real opulence is supplied by natural gifts such as gold, silver, pearls, valuable stones, fresh flowers, trees, and silken cloth. Thus, the Vedic civilization recommends opulence and decoration with these natural gifts of the Supreme Personality of God. Such opulence immediately changes the condition of the mind, and the entire atmosphere becomes spiritualized. King Prithu's capital was decorated with such highly opulent decorations. It's very opulent. Fragrant water distilled from sandalwood and aguru herb were sprinkled everywhere on the lanes, roads, and small parks throughout the city. And everywhere were decorations of unbroken fruits, flowers, wetted grains, varied minerals, and lamps, all presented as auspicious paraphernalia. That's very nice. You can see the opulence of a spiritual community. Text 3. At the street crossings, there were bunches of fruits and flowers, as well as pillars of banana trees and betel nut branches. All these combined decorations everywhere looked very attractive. As the king entered the gate of the city, all the citizens received him with many auspicious articles like lamps, flowers, and yogurt. The king was also received by many beautiful unmarried girls whose bodies were bedecked with various ornaments, especially with earrings which collided with one another. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Offerings of natural products such as betel nuts, bananas, newly grown wheat, paddy, yogurt, vermilion, carried by the citizens and scattered throughout the city are all auspicious paraphernalia, according to Vedic civilization, for receiving a prominent guest like a bridegroom, king, or spiritual master. Similarly, a welcome offered by unmarried girls who are internally and externally clean and are dressed in nice garments and ornaments is also auspicious. Kumari, or unmarried girls untouched by the hand of any member of the opposite sex, are auspicious members of society. Even today, in Hindu society, the most conservative families do not allow unmarried girls to go out freely or mix with boys. They are very carefully protected by their parents while unmarried. After marriage, they are protected by their young husbands. And When elderly, they are protected by their children. When thus protected, women as a class remain an always auspicious source of energy to man. Yeah, because they're not defiled, they're not contaminated by uh, liquor and sex and so forth. Text 5. When the king entered the palace, conch shells and kettle drums were sounded. Priests chanted Vedic mantras, and professional reciters offered different prayers. But in spite of all the ceremony to welcome him, the king was not the least bit affected. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The reception given to the king was full of opulence, yet he did not become proud. It is said, therefore, that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud, and the example is given that a tree which is full of fruits and flowers does not stand erect in pride, but instead bounds, bends downwards to show submissiveness. This is a sign of the wonderful character of great personalities. Yeah, and there are some places where trees are so, let's say, populated by fruits that they bend down, and it's very, very opulent thing to see with so many fruits that the tree seems to be bending down. Both the important citizens and the common citizens welcomed the king very heartily, and he also bestowed upon them their desired blessings. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A responsible king was always approachable by his citizens. Generally, the citizens, great and common, all had an aspiration to see the king and take benediction from him. The king knew this, and therefore, whenever he met the citizens, he immediately fulfilled their desires or mitigated their grievances. In such situations, in such dealings, a responsible monarchy is better than so-called democratic government, in which no one is responsible to mitigate the grievances of the citizens who are unable to personally meet the supreme executive head. In a responsible monarchy, the citizens had no grievances against the government, and even if they did, they could approach the king directly for immediate satisfaction. Okay, well, that's the difference between modern governing personalities and the Vedic personalities of kings. Uh, in, in a responsible monarchy, the citizens had no grievances against the government, and even if they did, they could approach the king directly for immediate satisfaction. And that's impossible today, or let's say it's almost impossible today. Yeah, I mean, the leaders of society, they have so many secretaries and other levels of persons who shelter the leader. So it's very difficult to meet such a leader. Text 7. King Prithu was greater than the greatest soul and was therefore worshipable by everyone. He performed many glorious activities in ruling over the surface of the world and was always magnanimous. After achieving such great success and a reputation which spread throughout the universe, he at last obtained the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A responsible king or chief executive has many responsible duties to attend to in ruling over the citizens. The most important duty of the monarch or the government is to perform various sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literatures. The next duty of the king is to see that every citizen executes the prescribed duties for his particular community. It is the king's duty to see that everyone perfectly executes the duties prescribed for the Varna and Ashrama divisions of society. Besides that, as exemplified by King Prithu, he must develop the earth for the greatest possible production of food grains. There are different types of great personalities. Some are positive great personalities, some comparative, and some superlative. But King Prithu exceeded all of them. He is therefore described here as Mahatama, greater than the greatest. Maharaj Prithu was a Kshatriya, and he discharged his Kshatriya duties perfectly. Similarly, the Brahmanas, Vaishyas, and Sudras can discharge their respective duties perfectly, and thus, at the ultimate end of life, be promoted to the transcendental world, which is called Parampadam. Parampadam, or the Vaikuntha planets, can be achieved only by devotional service. The impersonal Brahman region is also called Parampadam, but unless one is attached to the personality of Godhead, one must again fall down to the material world from the impersonal Parampadam situation. It is said, therefore, Arura Kricharena Parampadam Tata. The impersonalists endeavor very strenuously to achieve the Parampadam, or impersonal Brahmajyoti, but unfortunately, being bereft of a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they come down again to the material world. If one flies in outer space, he can go very high up, but unless he reaches a planet, he must come down again to Earth. Similarly, because the impersonalists who reach the Parampadam of the impersonal Brahmajyoti do not enter into the Vaikuntha planets, they come down again to this material world and are given shelter in one of the material planets. Although they may attain Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, all such planets are situated in the material world. So they are not attaining real salvation. Text 8. Sutta Goswami continued, O Shonaka, leader of the great sages, after hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prithu, the original king, who was qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, very submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. Text 9. Vidura said, My dear Brahmana Maitreya, it is very enlightening to understand that King Prithu was enthroned by the great sages and Brahmanas. All the demigods presented him with innumerable gifts, and he also expanded his influence upon personally receiving strength from Lord Vishnu. Thus, he greatly developed the earth. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Because Prithu Maharaj was an empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu and was naturally a great Vaishnava devotee of the Lord, all the demigods were pleased with him and presented different gifts to help him in exercising his royal power. And the great sages and saintly persons also joined in his coronation. Thus, blessed by them, he ruled over the earth and exploited its resources for the greatest satisfaction of the people in general. This has already been explained in the previous chapters regarding the activities of King Prithu. As will be apparent from the next verse, every executive head of state should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Prithu in ruling over his kingdom, regardless of whether the chief executive is a king or president, or whether the government is monarchical or democratic. This process is so perfect that it is followed. Everyone will become happy, and thus it will be very easy for all to execute devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so this is an explanation of an ideal king. King Prithu was an ideal king. Text 10. Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow in his footsteps. Well, still following you right now. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Yeah, who wants to hear about demons and all their nonsense activities? We should hear about Prithu Maharaj always. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Saint Vidura's purpose in hearing about Prithu Maharaj over and over again was to set an example for ordinary kings and executive heads, who should all be inclined to hear repeatedly about Prithu Maharaj's activities in order to also be able to rule over their kingdoms or states very faithfully for the peace and prosperity of the people in general. Unfortunately, at the present moment, no one cares to hear about Prithu Maharaja or to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding, although that is the sole aim and objective of human life. Wow. Very important statement. Yeah, well, this is Kali Yuga, and unfortunately, we don't have ideal kings. They're eating meat, they're gambling, they have illicit sex, they get intoxicated, and they harass people rather than support people to make spiritual advancement. Text 11. The great saintly sage Maitreya told Vidura, my dear Vidura, King Prithu lived in the tract of land between the two great rivers, Ganges and Yamuna. Because he was very opulent, it appeared that he was enjoying his destined fortune in order to diminish the results of his past pious activities. Uh-oh. That might not be so good. Purport. The terms pious and impious are applicable only in reference to the activities of an ordinary living being. But Maharaj Prithu was a directly empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, he was not subject to the reactions of pious or impious activities. As we have already explained previously, when a living being is specifically empowered by the Supreme Lord to act for a particular purpose, he is called a Shaktavasha avatar. Prithu Maharaj was not only a Shaktavasha avatar, but also a great devotee. A devotee is not subjected to the reactions resulting from past deeds. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Karmani nirdahatikintu bhakti bhajam. For devotees, the results of past pious and impious activities are nullified by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Arabdhan Eva mean as if achieved by past deeds. But in the case of Prita Maharaj, there was no question of reaction to past deeds. And thus the word Eva is used here to indicate comparison to ordinary persons. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Avajanantimam mudha. This means that sometimes people misunderstand an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be an ordinary man. The Supreme Godhead, his incarnations or his devotees, may pose themselves as ordinary men, but they are never to be considered as such, nor should an ordinary man not supported by authorized statements of the Shastras and Acharyas be accepted as an incarnation or devotee. By the evidence of Shastra, Sanatana Goswami detected Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a direct incarnation of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Lord Chaitanya never disclosed the fact, it is therefore generally recommended that the Acharya or Guru should not be accepted as an ordinary man. Yeah, there should be proper respect for exalted devotees. Text 12. Maharaj Prithu was an unrivaled king and possessed the scepter for ruling all the 7 islands on the surface of the globe. Now, scepter, I think it's like a type of, not a stick exactly, but it's something
like
that.
Wand. Something like a wand, magic wand.
Yeah. And it's held in the hand of the king.
Yes.
Maharaj Prithu was an unrivaled king and possessed the scepter for ruling the 7 islands on the surface of the globe. No one could disobey his irrevocable orders but the saintly persons, the Brahmanas, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaishnavas. Well, no one could disobey his irrevocable orders. That's very important. No one could disobey his irrevocable orders but the saintly persons, the Brahmanas, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaishnavas. Why would they want to disobey his irrevocable orders, though? That doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm not reading it right. Maharaj Prithu was an unrivaled king and possessed the scepter for ruling the 7 islands on the surface of the earth, on the surface of the globe. No one could disobey his irrevocable orders, but the saintly persons, the Brahmanas, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality Godhead, the Vaishnavas. Okay, well, let's read this purport and see what it says. Saptadvipa refers to the 7 great islands or continents on the surface of the globe. Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and Oceania. In the modern age, people are under the impression that during the Vedic period or the prehistoric ages, America and many other parts of the world had not been discovered. But that is not a fact. Prithu Maharaja ruled over the world many thousands of years before the so-called prehistoric age. And it is clearly mentioned here that in those days, not only were all the different parts of the world known, but they were ruled by one king, Maharaj Prithu. The country where Prita Maharaj resided must have been India because it is stated in the 11th verse of this chapter. Okay, well, the 11th verse was previous verse, that he lived in a tract of land between the rivers Ganges and Yamuna. This tract of land, which is called Brahmavarta, consists of what is known in the modern age as portions of Punjab and northern India. It is clear that the kings of India once ruled all the world and that their culture was Vedic. Okay, that defeats the speculation of all the false scientists. The word akalita indicates that orders by the king should not be disobeyed by anyone in the entire world. Such orders, however, were never issued to control saintly persons or the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The Supreme Lord is known as Achyuta, and Lord Krishna is addressed as such by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Senayor Ubayor Madhye Ratam Stapaya Me Chuta. Achyuta means one who does not fall because he is never influenced by the modes of material nature. When a living entity falls down to the material world from his original position, he becomes Chuta, which means that he forgets his relationship with Achyuta, or God. Actually, every living entity is a part and parcel, or a son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When influenced by the modes of material nature, a living entity forgets his relationship and thinks in terms of different species of life. But when he again comes to his original consciousness, he does not observe such bodily designations. This is indicated in Bhagavad Gita 5:18 by the words Pandita Samadarshina. Material designations create differentiations in terms of caste, color, creed, nationality, etc. Different gotras or family designations are distinctions in terms of the material body. But when one comes to Krishna consciousness, he immediately becomes one of the Achyuta Gotra, or descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus becomes transcendental to all considerations of caste, creed, color, and nationality. Yes, so oftentimes when there's a puja, the priest will say, "What is your gotra?" We should always say Achyuta Gotra. We're a member of Krishna's Gotra, or family. Prita Maharaj had no control over the Brahmana Kula. Brahmana Kula means the Brahmana persons, which refers to the learned scholars in Vedic knowledge, nor over the Vaishnavas who are above the considerations of Vedic knowledge. It is therefore said, Arche Vishnu Siladir Gurusu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Budhir Vishnu Va Vaishnavahanam Kalimala Mahatane Pada Tirte Mabu Budhi Shri Vishnu Namni Mantre Sakala Kalusa He Sabda Samanya Budhir Vishnu Sarvisvasware Se Tad Itara Samadir Yasyava Narakisa. One who thinks the deity in the temple to be made of wood or stone, who thinks of the spiritual master in the disciplic succession as an ordinary man, who thinks the Vaishnava in the Achyuta Gotra to belong to a certain caste or creed, or he thinks of Charanamrita Ganges water as ordinary water, is taken to be a resident of hell, Padma Purana. So those are all misconceptions that nonsense people have. From the facts presented in this verse, it appears that people in general should be controlled by a king until they come to the platform of Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, who are not under the control of anyone. Brahmana refers to one who knows Brahman, or the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. And Vaishnava is one who serves the supreme personality of Godhead. Okay, that's very good information. Once upon a time, King Prithu initiated the performance of a very great sacrifice in which great saintly sages, brahmanas, demigods from higher planetary systems, and great saintly kings, known as Rajarsis, all assembled together. One second, okay. In this verse, the most significant point is that although King Prithu's residential quarters were in India, between the rivers Ganges and Yamuna, the demigods also participated in the great sacrifice he performed. This indicates that formerly the demigods used to come to this planet. Similarly, great personalities like Arjuna, Yudhisthira, and many others used to visit higher planetary systems. Thus, there was interplanetary communication via suitable airplanes and space vehicles. Wow, that eliminates any doubt about the transcendent, well, let's say the highly advanced society that existed in the past. They also had airplanes and space vehicles. They were not walking around as like half monkey, half man. So this is explaining real history. In that great assembly, Maharaj Prithu first of all worshipped all respectable visitors according to their respective positions. After this, he stood up in the midst of the assembly, and it appeared that the full moon had arisen amongst the stars. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Well, you see, a genuine leader will respect all respectable visitors according to their respective positions. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to the Vedic system, the reception of great exalted personalities as arranged by Prithu Maharaj in that great sacrificial arena is very important. The first procedure in receiving guests is to wash their feet, and it is learned from Vedic literature that one time when Maharaj Yudhisthira performed a Rajasuya yajna, Krishna took charge of washing the feet of the visitors. Just see, the Supreme Personality Godhead is washing the feet of the visitors. Similarly, Prithu Maharaj also arranged for the proper reception of the demigods, the saintly kings, the brahmanas, and the great kings. Text 15. King Prithu's body was tall and sturdy, and his complexion was fair. His arms were full and broad, and his eyes as bright as the rising sun. His nose was straight, his face very beautiful, and his personality grave. His teeth were set beautifully in his smiling face. Wow, a wonderful person to see. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Amongst the four social orders, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, the Kshatriyas, both men and women, are generally very beautiful. As will be apparent from the following verses, it is to be concluded that not only were Maharaj Prithu's bodily features attractive, as described here, but he had specific, all auspicious signs in his bodily construction. As is said, the face is the index of the mind. One's mental constitution is exhibited by his facial features. The bodily features of a particular person are exhibited in accordance with his past deeds. For according to one's past deeds, his next bodily features, whether in the human society, animal society, or demigod society, are determined. This is proof of the transmigration of the soul through different types of bodies. Yeah, that's happening to all of us. Text 16. The chest of Maharaj Prithu was very broad. His waist was very thick, and his abdomen, wrinkled by lines of skin, resembled in construction a leaf of a banyan tree. His navel was coiled and deep. His thighs were of a golden hue. Instep was arched. Text 17. Slick hair on his head was very fine and curly, and his neck, like a conch shell, was decorated with auspicious lines. He wore a very valuable dhoti, and there was a nice wrapper on the upper part of his body. Okay, so he was dressed like a devotee. Text 18. As Maharaj Prithu was being initiated to perform the sacrifice, he had to leave aside his valuable dress, and therefore his natural bodily beauty was visible. It was very pleasing to see him put on a black deerskin and wear a ring of kusha grass on his finger. For this increased the natural beauty of his body. It appears that Maharaj Prithu observed all the regulative principles before he performed the sacrifice. Text 19. Just to encourage the members of the assembly and to enhance their pleasure, King Prithu glanced over them with eyes that seemed like stars in a sky wet with dew. He then spoke to them in a great voice. King Prithu's speech was very beautiful, full of metaphorical language, clearly understandable and very pleasing to hear. His words were all grave and certain. It appears that when he spoke, he expressed his personal realization of the absolute truth in order to benefit all who were present. Oh, that's real speech. Maharaj Prithu was beautiful, and his external bodily features and his speech was also very glorious in all respects. His words, which were nicely composed in highly metaphorical, ornamental language, were pleasing to hear and were not only mellow, but also very clearly understandable and without doubt or ambiguity. So he didn't mumble his words. He spoke very purely without, so that everyone could understand and at the same time respect the harmony of his words. King Prithu said, "O gentle members of the assembly, may all good fortune be upon you. May all of you great souls who have come to attend this meeting kindly hear my prayer attentively. A person who is actually inquisitive must present his decision before an assembly of noble souls. Well, what decision is he talking about? Let's hear that. Purport. In this verse, the word sadhava, all great souls, is very significant. When a person is very great and famous, many unscrupulous persons become his enemies, for envy is the nature of materialists. In any meeting, there are different classes of men, and it is to be supposed, therefore, that because Prithu Maharaja was very great, he must have had several enemies present in the assembly. Although they could not express themselves, Maharaj Prithu, however, was concerned with persons who were gentle, and therefore he first addressed all the honest persons, not caring for the envious. He did not, however, present himself as a royal authority empowered to command everyone, for he wanted to present his statement in humble submission before the assembly of great sages and saintly persons. As a great king of the entire world, he could have given them orders, but he was so humble, meek, and honest that he presented his statement for approval in order to clarify his mature decision. Everyone within this material world is conditioned by the modes of material nature and therefore has four defects. But although Prithu Maharaj was above all these, still, like an ordinary conditioned soul, he presented his statements to the great soul, sages, and saintly persons present there. Well, in other words, he spoke with humility and very respectfully to everyone present. King Prithu continued, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, I have been appointed the king of this planet, and I carry the scepter to rule the citizens, protect them from all danger, and give them employment according to their respective positions in the social order established by Vedic injunction. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A king is supposed to be appointed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to look after the interests of his particular planet. On every planet, there is a predominating person, just as we now see that in every country, there is a predominating president. If one is president or king, it should be understood that this opportunity has been given to him by the Supreme Lord. According to the Vedic system, the king is considered a representative of Godhead and is offered respect by the citizens as God in the human form of life. Actually, according to Vedic information, the Supreme Lord maintains all living entities, and especially human beings, to elevate them to the highest perfection. After many, many births in lower species, when a living entity evolves to the human form of life, and in particular to the civilized human form of life, his society must be divided into four gradations, as ordered by the Supreme Personality Godhead in Bhagavad Gita, Chatavarnyam Maya Shristam, etc. The four social orders, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, are natural divisions of human society. And as declared by Prithu Maharaj, every man in his respective social order must have proper employment for his livelihood. It is the duty of the king or the government to ensure that the people observe the social order and that they are all employed in their respective occupational duties. In modern times, since the protection of the government or the king has been withdrawn, social order has practically collapsed. No one knows who is a Brahmana, who is a Kshatriya, who is a Vaishya, or who is a Sudra. And people claim to belong to a particular social order by birthright only. It is the duty of the government to reestablish social order in terms of occupational duties and the modes of material nature, for that will make the entire world population actually civilized. If it does not observe the institutional functions of the four social orders, human society is no better than animal society, in which there is never tranquility, peace, and prosperity, but only chaos and confusion. Maharaj Prithu, as an ideal king, strictly observed the maintenance of the Vedic social order. Prayate iti praja. The word praja refers to one who takes birth. Therefore, Prithu Maharaj guaranteed protection for prajanam, all living entities who took birth in his kingdom. That doesn't mean only human beings. That means also the animals and the trees and everybody. Praja refers not only to human beings, but also to the animals, trees, and every other living entity. It is a duty of the king to give all living entities protection and food. The fools and rascals of modern society have no knowledge of the extent of the responsibility of the government. Animals are also citizens of the land in which they happen to be born, and they also have the right to continue their existence at the cost of the Supreme Court. The disturbance of the animal population by wholesale slaughter produces a catastrophic future reaction for the butcher, his land, and his government. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Yeah, there's a lot of meat eating going on today, which means there's massive slaughter of living entities, such as cows and goats and so forth. And that's why there's so much misery in the material world. If people would give up this meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication, then society would be heavenly. But no, these are four habits that they think is a sign of their success in life. But actually, it's a sign of how low class they are: meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication. Okay, we'll stop right there. Our takeaway today is the following. It is the duty of the king to give all living entities protection and food. The fools and rascals of modern society have no knowledge of the extent of the responsibility of the government. Animals are also citizens of the land in which they happen to be born, and they also have the right to continue their existence at the cost of the Supreme Lord. The disturbance of the animal population by wholesale slaughter produces a catastrophic future reaction for the butcher, his land, and his government. Audible. Well, let's stop immediately slaughtering animals in the name of so-called modern advancement. It's actually a very sinful thing to be slaughtering so many animals just to satisfy the palate of low-class people. You know how many cows are slaughtered, and that's not counting the fish and all the other living entities that are slaughtered. There are millions of cows that are killed every year for for eating. It's really horrible. And that's why there's so much misery in the world today. And it will not end until they stop killing cows. Cows should be protected. They should never be harmed. And especially they should never be eaten. There's so many other things that people can eat. You can make a roast of something that looks like a cow, but is made of vegetables and other natural things. You should not eat cows. It's very, very sinful. Every year they kill, I think, about 80 million. I'm not sure if it's 80 million.
About 36 million in US, but worldwide close to a billion. Sorry, 308 million cows are slaughtered globally each year. 308.
Now we
That's
know why.
almost like 900,000 to a million cows a day.
Now we know why people are suffering in this world. My God. If they just stopped eating cows, that would change many things. That would change many, many things.
So apparently we usually keep the cows in a line. That's basically the distance between here and San Diego.
Oh my God.
That many.
We gotta have Trump. We have to convince Trump to stop eating hamburgers. It's his favorite, right? He'll eat a hamburger, like a demon. Terrible. Okay, we'll stop there. Mr. Trump's meat eating. So our takeaway today is it says, it is the duty of the government to reestablish social order in terms of occupational duties and the modes of material nature. For that will make the entire world population actually civilized. If it does not observe the institutional functions of the four social orders, human society is no better than animal society, in which there is never tranquility, peace, and prosperity, but only chaos and confusion. Maharaj Prithu, as an ideal king, strictly observed the maintenance of the Vedic social order. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama. Okay, well, my dear devotees, don't eat cows. Really bad news if you do. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And be a, let's say, not just a vegetarian, but a Krishnarian. There's a difference between a Krishnarian and a vegetarian. Just eating vegetables is not spiritual, but eating prasadam is spiritual, right? Even though prasadam might be of only vegetables, but it's been offered first to the Lord and accepted by the Lord, and then distributed as Krishna prasadam. That should be our way of eating. Eating is very important. You have to eat, but you should only eat Krishna prasadam, nothing else. That is the correct way to eat. You shouldn't just eat food without offering it to the Lord. Then you're eating only sin. Haribo, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.